in case some people straggle in, but it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Maciej Goniewicz. He is a associate professor and member of the Roswell Park Cancer Institute in Buffalo. And yeah, I was really excited we had the opportunity to invite Maciej. So I met him, we were both on this National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine panel on the health effects of e-cigarettes. It's this really interesting, diverse group with all these various backgrounds. And basically what happens is anytime there's a question that no one knew the answer to, everyone said, Maciej, what does Maciej have to say? So he's got a very wide breadth of knowledge in the field of e-cigarettes and tobacco products, but also a very high depth of knowledge in this area of clinical pharmacology and toxicology. So just a little bit about him. Maciej was trained in Poland. He has a dual PharmD and also a PhD in pharmacological toxicology there at University of Silesia. And then he came to the States. He did a postdocs at UCSF, transitioned his field into the area of tobacco research, and then also did a postdoc at Queen's Mary University in London in the UK. And he's really been one of those people in the field of tobacco regulatory science where anytime there's a really big paper that comes out that rocks the field, 50-50 chance that Maciej either led it or has been a part of it. So this includes a New England Journal of Medicine clinical trial that came out last week, led by Peter Hajek, on the first big trial on the efficacy of e-cigarettes for smoking cessation. And if we would have had that during our report, that would have changed things, I think. It would have made it easier.
We would do updates. So
yes. Yeah, updates. But many other types of interesting research, some of the first research about Juul and nicotine salts and exposure to adolescent population, also interesting research. He's an investigator on the PATH study, so interesting research on biomarkers of exposure in single users of e-cigs, dual users. A really nice paper in JAMA Network open on that. And he's also a PI of the Roswell Park T-Course, along with Richard R. Connor. So we're just really pleased to have Dr. Maciej Goniewicz.
Thank you so much, Adam, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I spent 2 years in San Francisco, so I always miss California. I would like to come back and like to be here. So I prepared about 40-50 slides, but I know that we have over 1 hour, so I hope it will be more discussion, and please interrupt me in the middle of my talk, and if you have questions, so I will try to do my best and answer those questions, or we can speculate why the results showing what they do show. So I was asked to talk about the pharmacology and the toxicity of those new emerging products and the e-cigarettes. And I will go through what we have done and some examples of the other research done by other groups to answer the question, are those products safe? Are they effective in nicotine delivery? Are just less harmful than tobacco cigarettes? What might be the health implications for regular use of the product? So most of my research focused on the adults. I have done a few studies on the youth. I know that you highly focus on the young generation of users of those products. So we will go through the different approaches how to assess the health impact, for example, on the people who are naive to nicotine, or the people who already are addicted and switch from tobacco to electronic cigarettes. Just to clarify, and this is my disclosure, I previously done some work for pharmaceutical companies. It was not on electronic cigarettes, but on other forms of nicotine replacement therapies, and at some point I received a research grant from Pfizer, and I serve on the advisory board to Johnson & Johnson. And however, all of the research on the electronic cigarettes were funded by the public funds, and I have no affiliation with any industry, including the e-cigarette industry or tobacco industry. And the most of the results that I will present today from my own study came from NIH funding. And of course, the standard disclosure that it doesn't, and I do a lot of work for the regulatory agency, including FDA, Canada, and whatever they say, this will be my private opinion, and it doesn't represent. You know that it's there. That's the same that you put in all of your papers. So I will focus on electronic cigarettes, I know that we were talking about the different terms and terminology used by the different groups of users. Most of my slides will include the term enhanced, because this is what we used in our report. The National Academy of Science report, when you call them electronic nicotine delivery systems. There are some suggestions now that call them nicotine vaporized products, because of what I will show you in a moment, all this new generation of the products that actually might come out on the market very soon. So that you know how diverse the group of the product is, and this is really challenge for us to understand pharmacology and toxicology of those products. So going from those very tiny small devices that are available mostly in the convenience stores, the Cigalikes, or the first generation of the device that resembles, at least in the size and color, the classical, the conventional tobacco cigarettes, going with this tank system or ego-like products, going to the big devices like mods. There are some strange devices like pipe or e-cigarettes. We don't really see many regular users of those products. And of course the new generation of the device, the new type of device, pods or pod mods, people use the different terms, jewel-like type devices. So it's really important to understand that this, and keep in mind that the variability of the product category large, because when we look at the data from studies, we need to think whether we can extrapolate the findings from the single study to all of the other devices. So if we do the study on the jewel, would it be true for mods? If we do like our randomized clinical trial, when we use this type of generation, would the outcome of our randomized control trial would be the same if we use the jewel in our study? So it's really challenging. We cannot test all of the products because that would be a never-ending story. Yeah. But at least understand what might be driving, what product characteristics might be driving the outcomes of the study. If this is a smoking cessation trial, we might expect the nicotine delivery is important factor. If you look at the abuse liability of the product, that's again would be probably nicotine. If we look at the appeal of the products, then we add maybe flavorings as the next variable. We recently noticed some perception about the harm of the product, the relative. So our participants in our study look at the different products. The way they perceive the harm of the product is they actually think that this is the less harmful than this one. So the perceived harm was associated with the size of the product. So there's a lot of variability across the products, but keep in mind that how your findings from your study can translate to the other products. And this is really a lot of my research is international, looking at the European market and looking at and right now in the Asia, what's going on there. And this is something that is already there on the market, and there's a lot of confusion when it comes to distinction between electronic cigarettes and heat-not-burn product. Are you familiar with these products? So you know that it's still under review and waiting outcome from the potential authorization, marketing authorization of heat-not-burn products, particularly one brand, IQOS. But in certain countries, like Japan or Korea, those products are as popular as e-cigarettes here. And people ask why. So Japan is interesting example. The e-cigarettes are illegal there. So this is the e-cigarette. In Korea, the law, the regulation actually calls this product e-cigarette. They call it e-cigarette. And there was one laboratory study that I reviewed, and there was like the huge amount of the toxicants in electronic cigarette. It was study done in Korea, and they referred to IQOS as the electronic cigarette. So be cautious and always look at where the data came from and what exactly device looks like. So
Could I
yes.
clarify? Are you saying that the Korean study, which is pretty well known on the toxicants on e-cigarettes, was actually about heat not burn?
yes.
Oh, thank you. Whoops.
Yes.
I'm pretty ignorant today, I think. What actually is, I just never thought, what actually is the difference between heat not burn versus e-cigarette?
All right. I've got a slide. I knew you would ask. So these are the three categories of the products that we research, of course. Tobacco cigarettes, except of the research devices, the research product, the nicotine-free cigarettes, all of the commercial products contain nicotine. All of the tobacco cigarettes contain tobacco, the processed leaves, fermented leaves. There is a combustion involved in the use of the product. So that's why the temperature in the product goes really high, particularly during the puff, when the user takes puff. There is no electricity, no battery, no heating element. And so that's, for example, Marlboro cigarettes. And the hypothetical risk of these products related to the average is the highest. This is what we at least hypothesize that this is the really high risk product. Then we have on the other hand, we have the electronic cigarettes as we know it here in the US. So most products, they contain nicotine. There are some products without any nicotine, but most users use nicotine-containing products. But those products do not contain tobacco. Yeah, the nicotine is dissolved in the propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, but there is no tobacco in terms of the tobacco leaves, the processed tobacco. There is no combustion in terms of burning. The temperature doesn't go too high, and some of the devices have a threshold how high temperature can go up. Of course, there is an electronic system, so there is a battery, there is a heating element, and I will talk about it most of my talk will be about comparing the risk of the two different products. But because there is no combustion, so many of the toxicants that are generated during combustions are not present in electronic cigarettes. The best example is carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide, there are high levels in the tobacco smoke, but nothing is emitted from electronic cigarettes. But because there is also no tobacco, so some of the toxicants present in the tobacco are either eliminated or at very low levels in electronic cigarettes. That would be nitrosamines.
So with the heat not burn products, what is actually produced and what are users inhaling?
Very good question. So that's actually somewhere in between. So that the heat not burn share certain characteristics of electronic cigarettes. They have a heating component. But they do not have nicotine dissolved in the solvent. They still have tobacco. And they are, so according to the company and the studies by the company, there is no combustion going on. But there is this one study from Switzerland group, from Lausanne, showing some of the chemicals that suggest that some combustion takes place. This is the one study, and I was discussing the findings from the researchers. I was actually in Lausanne a few months ago, and because we don't see the same byproducts in our laboratory that they detected. I don't know exactly why. So one of the potential explanation might be the product is changing. This is the company changed the product. So if the temperature control system is getting more effective, then probably we see less toxicants than they did. So the heat not burn has tobacco like tobacco cigarette, still has a battery, still has a heating system, but does not contain purified nicotine dissolved in a solvent. So this one has a liquid, this one has tobacco, this one has tobacco. This one doesn't have battery, this has battery, this has battery.
Is that we're calling it heat not burn here, but the company actually calls it, I think, tobacco heating system, THS or something?
Yeah.
Is that how we confuse them again?
Yeah, oh, there's a new term, heated tobacco products, HTP.
Oh, HTP rule.
Yeah. And the other companies, because, so if a product enters the US market, we will deal with that one, but in Asia, each big company has their own device. So there's a product called Bloom, there is a product called Glow, there is a product in Korea called Lil, which is independent company. So that's, you know, the same problem that we have here with many brands of the e-cigarettes. They get into the same trap with many brands of the whatever we call it, HTP, yeah, heated tobacco. So that the heat not burn is, I use this term here because this is what in most of the documentation and papers by Philip Morris. But some people don't like it because it's an industry term and it kind of might be misleading and may imply some less risk. But just be careful in terms of this might be coming. If you ask the questions about the electronic cigarettes, if the product is on the market, then people might start answering the question about that product.
Actually, related to that, didn't Philip Morris just remove market from the market now that they are starting to promote Juul, Altria?
I've never heard about it.
There was one major e-cigarette that just was removed from the major tobacco company. It might have been, I can't remember which one.
I'm just wondering if that'll affect IQOS too.
I haven't heard about it. So the IQOS has very unique marketing. I don't know, have you ever been outside the US and have you seen how they sell the IQOS? The IQOS is sold in the stores that resembles actually Apple stores. It's a whole store that is just,
Do too.
yeah, it's just about IQOS. There's only one product in the whole store. It is the IQOS.
Okay, another question. Why in Japan are e-cigarettes illegal if they're potentially less harmful than heat-not-burn?
So their regulatory framework is that e-cigarettes are treated as a medicinal product. So if they contain nicotine, they should be registered as a drug, the same way as the patches, gums, and no company went with this route of registration. For example, in Europe, and in the States, it's true, you can do both. So you can market the product as a tobacco product, or you can market it as a pharmaceutical product. In Europe, it's more easy to do as a pharmaceutical product because what you need to show is the nicotine delivery. You need to show that the product delivers nicotine. In US, the classification is based on the therapeutic claims. So if you make a claim that the product helps smokers quit smoking, you need to show efficacy and safety data.
So there's no nicotine in the e-juice, it's legal?
Yes,
Yeah.
in Japan, yeah. E-cigarettes without nicotine are legal. Nobody's using them.
Can you talk a little bit about the modified risk application that Philip Morris is seeking, or the designation of the IQOS states?
Yes, yes. So there are two applications under review, yeah, by FDA. The one is to allow the product to be marketed in the US. So simply setting as a new tobacco product. And that's it. Yeah, this is still under review. The second application is to make a claim on the product or to market the product as a reduced risk product. So to do that, they need to show the data that supports that IQOS is less harmful on the population level than combustible tobacco cigarettes. And as I remember, was it 200,000 pages, the application? Yeah.
It's a 90-page executive summary.
Yeah. So this is, I remember when they first started presenting the data on the conference on the product, so they were doing a lot of clinical trials and a lot of studies from pharmacokinetics, toxicity, animal models, and I will show you some of what we have done with the product. But so they need to show that the product is less harmful than that one. But since in US it needs to apply to the population as a whole, so they also need to show, for example, data that there will be no intake of the product among the kids who wouldn't smoke. So that's a lot of caveats here, and this review process already. Well, we know how FDA works.
I wish we did.
No, we know that it works so slow. That what we know. So, but I know that they are under pressure, and everyone is expecting that they should announce the decision, whatever the decision will be. So they might reject all the application, request some additional data from the company, and may not authorize the product to be marketed in US. The second option is that they will allow for the marketing of the product, but they will not approve modified risk claims. I would bet on this.
The second one? Yeah.
It's just my guessing. I'm not on the team stack. It's just my guessing. And then the third possibility is that they will approve both applications. So that means that the product will be on the market, and then you will see advertisements saying that this is less risky product than drugs. But I'm just guessing. We can make it. We can bet today, and we can meet next year and see who is right. But do you have any idea what would be the outcome?
Yeah, because what you're saying, the lack of data on youth, you would think that it would not, the MRTP would be approved, but then it's been sitting around for so long, and it's been, like Philip Morris is smarter than we are,
Yeah.
so.
And they, you know, the TPSAC, the advisory committee, actually voted that there are no strong evidence supporting reduced risk.
It is not, right?
No.
Yeah, but the other things were.
I think they had like
Yeah.
5 questions, and they voted anonymously. But it's just an advisory board, so it's not what the FDA would do. They don't need to follow that. But they voted on, I think, 3 out of 5 that there is no strong evidence supporting the reduced risk. So I'm a collaborator with the, as I mentioned, International Tobacco Control Study, ITC project, and that problem, how people, if we really ask about the electronic cigarettes in a different country, are we getting the answers about that product, or people are actually using that product? It's very, very hard to make a distinction. And it's getting, I don't want to go into the details, but what we see right now is one of the brands is actually the hybrid. So the product contains e-liquid and contains the tobacco. So we might, it's getting so messy and difficult to. So I will focus my talk mostly about the safety and the relative risk of all of the different products. And this question about how safe electronic cigarettes are they really less harmful than tobacco cigarettes? What is the long-term health risk of regular use of the product? This question is still on the table, and we try to answer it using different methods, using in vitro laboratory studies, using population studies, using some clinical trials, and if there is any risk, what's actually driving the risk, what's driving the response to the product. And this is from the media, safer, or this is from but the question, the right term should be less harmful. And that's when it comes to the discussion about the harm reduction. So it's not elimination of the harm, it's harm reduction. So that still might be the harm associated with vaping, but is it less than from smoking? And it comes to the question about the absolute versus relative risk. And I think this really needs to be clearly communicated, and I see in many media reports the confusing about those two terms. But it also has the implication whether we ask about smokers who switch to tobacco cigarettes, or the young people who never ever smoked tobacco cigarettes and now started using electronic cigarettes. So of course, if we're talking about the absolute risk, it's like comparing to not using the product at all. So that relates to the young people. So is there any elevation in the respiratory symptoms, risk of asthma, COPD? Is there any increased risk of lung cancer, heart attacks, etc., as compared to kids who don't use the product? Yeah? When it comes to relative risk, and if our comparator is tobacco cigarette, so then the question is more the situation relates to the smokers who switch from tobacco cigarettes to electronic cigarettes. Do they reduce risk? If yes, how much? For dual users, is there any additive risk of using 2 products at the same time? That's also an important question. So I think this situation implies to the young people. This situation implies to the adult smokers. And then when it comes to relative risk, we might choose actually different comparators.